Hey, friend, welcome to the Dyslexic Maverick podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Disbrow. I'm a wife, mom, entrepreneur, and recovering HR exec turned keynote speaker, executive coach, and organizational consultant for everything ADHD and dyslexia in the workplace. As someone who was diagnosed with dyslexia and ADHD later in life, I'm here to encourage and equip you to embrace that unique neurospicy noggin of yours. I believe everyone has a beautifully wired brain, and I'm here to help you maximize it so you can live your best life. I'm Nancy, and this is the Dyslexic Maverick podcast. Welcome back to the Dyslexic Maverick. I'm so excited to have Justin Sternberg here with me today. Hi, Justin.
How's it going?
Good. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. So one of the first questions I always ask guests is, do you have any drinks around you that are hidden on your desk? Because it seems to be a pretty neurodivergent trait to have multiple drinks. Okay, water. Okay.
Hot water. Absolutely. Always
Awesome.
have something to drink beside me.
Absolutely. Yeah, so many of my guests have like multiple different options. They have like the caffeinated one, they have the hydrating one, they have different drinks.
Yeah, it's funny. Before this, I actually cleaned up. So all the cups and everything else that were right here, they got put in the dishwasher. Finally, as my wife would say, finally you put your stuff in the dishwasher. Are you nervous or something? A little bit.
I just had a podcast to record, honey.
Absolutely.
Too funny. Well, good. Well, let me give you a little bit more of a formal introduction. So Justin is an executive producer and senior projects manager at ABC 13 KTRK in Houston, Texas. He's been at the station for over 20 years and was diagnosed with dyslexia early on, where he faced significant challenges in school. Thanks to his parents' perseverance and specialized reading instructions, he graduated high school and went on to earn a journalism degree with minors in speech and sociology.
Yeah.
Now he advocates for neurodiversity in the workplace, inspired by his own experiences and those of his children, which we'll talk more about today, and working to foster that same environment at ABC that really embraces and supports neurodivergent strengths. So thanks again, Justin, for joining us today.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm excited about this. I always like to get the word out that it's okay to be dyslexic.
Yes. I absolutely love that. I came across your LinkedIn and we were connected with a mutual friend. And once I started honestly scrolling your LinkedIn, I was so impressed with how much you do just to get the positive word out there, which we'll certainly dive into. Can you maybe kind of take us back though? Because it sounds like you struggled a little bit in school growing up. And thankfully, I think those of us lucky enough for parents that really advocated for us, we came out on the good side of things. But can you kind of take us through your school journey a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, early on in second grade, my parents noticed that I was falling behind. My teachers knew I was falling behind. They said, "Okay, well, let's get him tested for dyslexia. Let's get him tested to see what's going on." And they held an ARD meeting after doing all this testing, and they realized that yes, he's dyslexic. Yes, he's probably ADHD, ADD at the time, right? Because ADHD
Mhm.
hadn't been uh, diagnosed at that point. But it was one of those things that the only solution at the time was, hey, put him on Ritalin. That'll slow him down. It'll help him focus, everything else. Well, they put me on Ritalin, and literally not even a week into it, they said, that's not my kid. My parents looked at me and go, that is not my son. He's a zombie. We're taking him off of this. Whatever we have to do, we're just going to do this. And you know what? That's as a parent, you kind of look at it and go, well, I need him to focus. Well, part of it is that creativity and that sense of doing is that motion, that movement. My wife was giving me a hard time before I came on here. I was cleaning up, I was vacuuming, I was doing all these things that I probably wouldn't do on it, but that's the type of stuff that we do. We kind of just get our mind racing and we never sit down and go. Anyways, going forward, luckily my parents said, okay, whatever we have to do, let's get him the help he needs. They held me back into second grade. So I was going on to third. They held me back. I got, it was a very hard time, right? I mean, any kid going, hey, my friends are going to third grade. Why am I going to second grade? I persevered, right? I mean, that's kind of a neurodiverse trait is we always figure out a way to keep moving forward. I get in there. We get into jump ahead to middle school. I'm starting middle school. I'm having a real hard time. I'm still in special ed classes. They would take me out of the class to do testing and everything else. One teacher gravitated to me, and it was my science teacher. And he noticed that I had a real interest in things going on around me, and touching and feeling and trying things. His name was Mr. Murder, and he looked at me. He went to my parents. To go, hey, can I help your son and utilize him to do things, with the class and then outside of the class. And, we did these experiments, and then they featured me and him in this article about, just getting hands-on experience and everything else in the classroom. And I did really well in his class. And why? Because he took me under his wing. He believed in me, told me I could. For so long, I was always told I couldn't. And now I can. So between that and following my sports, football and baseball and everything else, those were my carrots. Those are what I needed to succeed. A lot of times kids don't get that. A lot of times kids get looked at as he's just a problem child. He's not going to do well. They kind of write you off. Those teachers, those same teachers that told me that my parents said, he can't and we need to hold him back and everything else. They're the same teachers that told me I would never graduate high school. They were the same teachers that told me that if I would never go to college, and if I'm lucky, I may get a trade job and I'll stay out of jail. Because what they saw is most people end up in jail because our minds go to where we can and where we're accepted. And a lot of times, unfortunately, that leads to criminal activity and just being that creative person that you do. If you look at a lot of criminals, they're extremely creative, right?
Mhm,
But a lot
mhm.
of them can't read. A lot of times their literacy is way, way down. That needs to be caught way, way in advance.
Absolutely. You're saying all the things, and I can tell that you've been on camera so much because you're saying it so succinctly, and I appreciate that. It is so true that so many of the best and brightest minds in our school right now, and those that have graduated in the past couple decades are ending up down the wrong path because we did not identify them, and we're trying to fit them into a box that they shouldn't fit into. And unfortunately, we continue to do it in the workplace too. I wish that I could say that once you graduate high school it all gets better. I think for a lot of us it does because we have a little bit more freedom.
Right.
But even in the workplace, we're so many times put into this box of you have to take meeting minutes or write a certain way. And I can only imagine being a news producer. I mean, that has a lot of writing
Yeah.
attached to it, right?
It's tough. I mean, I hid my dyslexia up until about 2 years ago. I would never tell anybody that I was dyslexic. I would just ignore it. I would just make an excuse of why I couldn't spell a word or why my thoughts were all jumbled up on paper and everything else. For me, putting stuff from here onto paper is really tough. And it's been that way forever. I can remember one of my bosses came to me and goes, she looked at one of my scripts and she was like, Justin, this is not this isn't good. This is like you can't utilize this. And in my mind, I'm looking at it going, beginning, middle, end, looks fine to me. She hooked me up with one of our reporters, and that reporter, she said, follow Deborah around, let her help you with your writing, let her kind of critique your writing and stuff like that. And Deborah was able to take my writing and go, okay, I see what you're trying to do here. Let's just flip this. Let's just move this here. Let's work on why you did this versus this. And it helped me get a little bit better. But I still never told my boss that, hey, a lot of this is because of my dyslexia. I can't do it. I'll tell you where the tipping point was for me is when it was 2 years ago, we were in Slack messaging. And my boss, a new boss, he basically said, he kept on correcting me for like, you mean this word, or you mean this spelling, or like he kept on doing that. And I finally just said, you know what? Sorry, my dyslexia is taking over. My spelling may be a little off. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I don't care. If you're gonna sit there and treat me this way, and you treat others in that same sense, you're just discouraging, right? I mean, like, really? Okay, we're in a messenger. Does it really matter if I spell that word right or not? It's between you and I. Obviously, you interpreted the word the correct way. It's not that big a deal. You were just meaning to point out the faults versus the positive of what we're trying to accomplish at the end goal. So I know what people are thinking when they are in the workplace and they're going, I can't spell, I can't do this. I need to be perfect. You don't need to be perfect. Stop being perfect. Perfect is not attainable. If you think you can be perfect, you will always fail because you're gonna just drive yourself down to the point where you can't succeed. So I always encourage people now as like talk about it. It's
Yeah.
worth it because you know what it does? It opens their mind to say, well, maybe I'm just being mean. And at the end of the day, just being mean kind of destroys the atmosphere across the business, and nobody accomplishes what the end goal is to get to that finish line. Stop. Just take a step
Yeah.
back. It's okay to be dyslexic. It's okay to be ADHD. It's okay to be autistic. There's a lot of people out there that are doing great things. If you tap into their strengths versus their weaknesses, you'll always succeed.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love to say if you're gonna focus on your weaknesses, you're just gonna have stronger weaknesses. But if you focus on your strengths, you're gonna have stronger strengths. Like, let's focus on those. And so many of the things with dyslexics now, I mean, AI can take on so many things that used to be challenging for us 20,
Yep,
30 years ago. We didn't have technology. Now we have so much technology that can help with
absolutely.
Grammarly and audiobooks and all the things. No, I absolutely agree. One of the questions I got asked, I was doing a speaking, engagement last week, and they said, "What were some of the things that you used to do to mask?" And I think, honestly, the first thing that came out of my mouth or to cope and to mask, but one of the first things that came out of my mouth was drinking. And it was just kind of like I was just trying to be funny. But then I called myself out a little bit. I'm like, "Actually, humor is one of the things that I do on a regular basis when I'm uncomfortable and I misspelled a word on a whiteboard or I mixed up my words when I'm speaking." Are there different things that you do? I'm kind of thinking almost like things that other leaders could watch out for of like, oh, she's always making a joke when this happens. Anything like that that you catch yourself doing?
I've always taken on the role of the dumb kid. I guess
Mm,
I, I'm just I'm just being dumb. I mean, I'll make
yeah.
a joke. I will try to make something funny. Like I was the kid, I was the class clown when I couldn't do something. I was the dreamer when I was sitting at my desk. So I was the kid that would sit at the desk and go, that the teacher would go, "Hello, are you there? Wake up." Right? Wasn't that I was sitting there thinking about something that was more interesting than obviously what you're pointing out. But the other side was the humor is like I knew I was about to be made fun of. And when I was about to be made fun of, that's when I would take on that role of class clown. And I would do something that would just make everybody laugh. Because then at the end of the day, it wouldn't be like they're laughing with me, not at me,
Mhm.
because really what happens, whether it's in school or in the workplace, what I've noticed is people that continuously get beaten down about their disabilities or their way of thinking, or you're kind of the oddball out, you continuously move backwards into a corner and you just want to hide. You don't want to come out. And what happens is when everybody comes to that collaboration table, everybody, you just kind of sit there and you get to the point where you're silent. And the worst thing you can do is silence your people, because when you silence your people, then there's no other creative ideas coming across the deal. You need to be that creative person. You need to be the person, whether it's right or wrong, believe it or not, ideas come from other ideas. So you say one thing, other ideas lead from that because people are going to go, oh, we can take that to another level. Have we thought about doing this? And then we have doing this. And it just builds and builds and builds until you have this creative solution. But a lot of times, dyslexics, people with ADHD get squashed down because they talk too much. They have too many ideas. People feel threatened by us quite a bit, and it's not that we're trying to be threatening. It's we want the best product. We want to do the best. We want to be the best out there that we can be. And you know what? Part of it comes from that. We have to make things happen. We've always had to make things
Mhm.
happen. We always told them we can't. You can't read, you can't spell, you can't do this, you can't do that. Well, you know what? There's two types of people in the world. There's people that say, you know what? I'm not going to accept that. I'm going to do this no matter what. And then there's the other people that fall into that corner, and that's the ones that take down the wrong path. Let's stop the wrong path. There's no reason for it. There could be more Richard Bransons of the world, more Henry Fords, more Elon Musk, all those people that are doing amazing things because of the way they think and are willing to put it out there. Let them go a little bit. You may
Mm.
change the world instead of going down this path of, you know what, time to make the donuts. Exact same thing every single day.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm imagining in your work world, you have a little bit of flexibility, right? And a little bit of creative design in how you produce stories or what type of stories. Like, can you maybe, I'm picturing maybe the high school kid that's like, okay, my mom or dad told me to listen to this podcast because you know what I mean? Like, because I'm struggling right now and I don't know what if I even can go to college or if I'll even get into college. And maybe could you just take a couple minutes and like paint that picture of how a dyslexic brain could be so powerful in the news industry?
Well, it's communications, right? I mean, at
Yeah.
the end of the day, the one thing we're really good at is communicating what we're thinking, right? We can talk, we can go, 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 go. I can tell you exactly what I'm thinking. Like, you ask me to put that on paper, total failure. You're not going to understand a word I put down on paper. But yes, the creative thinking is what attracted me to journalism. I didn't go into college thinking, oh, I'm going to be a journalist. I was on the yearbook in high school for a hot minute taking pictures. Ugh, I didn't like that. So I went to college and my mom and dad were like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I didn't know anything about college. Like I never expected
Mm.
to go to college. So I had to kind of figure out this way as I go. So I saw a guy walking around campus carrying a camera and I said, what are you doing? He goes, oh, I'm doing a news story for the television news station here at the campus. I said, oh, that's cool. So without my freshman year, third week at school, I walk into the communications dean's office and I said, can I volunteer? What do I need to do? I figured out what I want to be. This is my major. So I was able to take my creativity, hands-on editing, filming, video, never really thinking I would be a great writer, never really going in that direction. Everybody told me you have to be a good writer to be able to make it in this business. And that's true, right? I mean, you really do need to understand how to write to be able to be that. But nowadays, like I always say, we're in a really cool spot with technology, as you mentioned. Technology can do a lot of things for me. So the technology part can correct what I write. The but they can't correct how I think and how I visualize
Mm.
something on TV and build that out. So where a dyslexic brain or an ADHD brain comes in is, okay, how do I want to feature this so my audience totally understands where I'm going to go? And that's where the creativity comes in. I'll get, Justin, how can we
Mhm.
visualize this? Well, hey, this is a big, wide open space. You know what? Out in the field, you should take the drone today. You're going to fly drone for X, Y, and Z. That'll give us a wide shot of this, community garden that's going to soon be turned into solar panels, right? That'll give you the idea of how big a space this is. We're able to do that. Or like during the pandemic, people couldn't be anywhere near anybody, right? So you had to separate people. And then there was a lot of numbers coming out, everything. So how do we do this? I can sit there and write up a package, right? With a beginning, a middle, and an end. But at the end of the day, it's like, what do people want to know? Okay, let me tell you where we stand today. Here's the numbers that have come out in Harris County. This is where we stand on COVID cases. This is what, and it became a conversational piece in how we feature things with, and then we also took question and answers, right? We want to know what you want. Question one, you want to know this. This is what answer is. We back it up with some sort of expert or whatever. It's just a different way of telling stories that anybody can
Mhm.
do. But that, again, the difference in thinking is key, right? Because I go
Mhm.
back to that was saying it's time to make the donuts, right? News is very systematic. You have a rundown. At the rundown, you have
Mhm.
13 minutes in the top block, you have a 2-minute break, you have another few minutes, you have another break, and these producers build this out, right? It's just whatever. But the creativity comes into, okay, you have these 4 stories, but this one's going to make a real impact. How do we tell that story differently? And that's what you want to put into is how do we feature that type of stuff. So that's kind of what the newsroom is. In fact, I met with a group at the New House or Night House Learning Center, which is a literacy learning center. They focus on adult literacy. They focus on kids with dyslexia and reading, and they teach the science of reading. I went and talked to a group of these, young teens that were thinking of college. None of them had any hopes of going to
Mm.
college. None of them were like looking ahead. But when I talked to them, I was like, "You can do whatever you want, guys. You just have to put your mind to it." And then I brought them over to the station and gave them a tour and said, "Look, this is," and you could see the lights come on in their heads of going, "Oh, I could do this with this. I could do this with this. I could really do it." And they've all wrote me and said, "What do I need to do to get an internship?"
Hmm.
That's the type of inspiration. Again, we mentioned early on that one person. Dyslexics really need that one person. If they don't get that one person, it's not a good thing.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, I 100% agree. And you and I were talking before about we've each had that teacher, and it's not a lot of teachers. Honestly, most teachers did not believe in us, and most teachers were like, just get them through and out of right, like just
Yep,
keep pushing them through.
yep,
And I think that that's the one thing with parents. We all hope and pray that teachers are going to raise their hand and tell us when something's wrong with the child, and so many times, more times than not, that doesn't happen. And so if you're as a parent, if you're waiting for that, you have to advocate for your child,
for
and
sure.
really a lot harder, and it's a lot more work than you would ever guess that it would be to get
Right.
your child the supports and help that they need. Could you, along those lines a little bit, you've kind of thrown out the term of science of reading. Could you
Yep.
just describe for our listeners a little bit more, because I think you have such a good knowledge and foundation with the science of reading, and I think so many people say terms that are really close to that
Right.
in kind of this like trying to hope to get into the Orton Gillingham models and all these different like buzzwords that are out there, but
Right.
there is I mean, there's a real true science to reading and how we actually learn to read, right?
Sure. The most unnatural thing to do in life is read. Think about it. If you come out with no knowledge of this and we throw a bunch of things on a piece of paper and say, read this, you have no idea what that looks like, right? It's like somebody that is born blind has no idea what grass looks like.
Mm.
But somebody that can see grass and then loses their vision, in their mind, they can see what that grass looks like. They can picture that, right? So, but you can't do that with reading. Reading, you have to understand what every how one letter connects with the other, sounding out stuff like that. Right now, the model for learning to read is memorization. The worst thing you can do for a child with dyslexia is try to tell them to memorize something. If you ask me to memorize something, ugh, not going to happen. I don't look at like I'll read something, I'll read a paragraph, and somebody will look at me and go, "You skipped that word, you read that word wrong, you didn't." But in my mind, I'm reading what I see. Like I'm just what my mind is reading and the thoughts are saying. That's key to this. And it's breaks down the words to make sense. And the repetition of breaking down the words allows you to, when you look at other words, actually read it and comprehend it because you know what each syllable says versus I just remember that word, whatever, pictures, because somebody told me that word is pictures, right? I mean, I
Mhm.
have no idea what that means. But if you'd ask me, pick ters, pick right? Churs, then I can see how the word is spelled. When I look at another word that's broken down in syllables, I understand how that word is built. That's the science of reading. And I mean, in a nutshell, my wife, who is getting her master's in this type of stuff, she can explain it a lot better than I can. But in a nutshell, that's what happened to me when I went back to in that middle school. We found a teacher way back when 30 years ago that basically taught the science reading, wasn't called that at the time, but took me back to
Mhm.
elementary school and I literally had to learn my ABCs again and learn words. And she
Mhm.
broke it down. By the time I was in high school, late junior high, early high school, I was out of special ed. I wasn't taking tests in other words because understood how things worked and understand. Am I still the best reader in the world? No. Am I the best speller in the world? Absolutely not. Can I hold my own? Absolutely. And it's because those teachers recognized, focused, and made me do, instead of just sweeping me under the rug or pushing me on to the next grade just to get rid of me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that was one of my first aha moments when I started to dig into what my daughter was learning and how she was being taught to read. And
Yeah,
it was literally guess, look at the picture, and try to memorize the sight words, right? Like those were the three things in second grade that's how they were teaching her how to read. It had nothing to do with syllables and phonics and the different ways to break apart a word, the different rules that come into it. And, luckily, with my younger son, we found a classical education model that's strongly supportive of the science of reading, just by nature, because it's taking us back 60, 70 years to the way people were taught to read, you know, decades ago, and it works. And still, to be very clear, I completely agree with you. It's still gonna be very challenging for a dyslexic individual to read, but you will get there. And even like you said, going back to in junior high, going back to elementary school reading and starting at the basics is so critical to and kids do catch up. Our brains are, that plasticity that you can catch up quick. The earlier we can do it, the better. But yeah, it is so, so critical. I will say both my children have, Orton Gillingham specialized tutors, and they're both better spellers than I am. Even my 10-year-old is a better speller than I am today, just because I never got that actual support. My parents would
right,
have done everything that they knew, but they just didn't know that at that point. Um, and so, yeah, it's just so, so important. So I can never say that enough of
right,
how parents can get those supports. And now with virtual tutoring, it's a little bit easier even still, that we can cross state lines and boundaries to find the right tutors for our kids
for sure.
and schools too, right? Because you've had some experience with, more, neurodivergent friendly schools.
Yep.
I don't know if that's a good way to say it.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, like we took our kids out of public school. We fought. Like, keep this in mind. This is how hard it really is. We were parents that knew going into school that there could be an opportunity or a chance that our kids are dyslexic, they could have some learning disabilities, that type of stuff. We understood that. So we looked for it, we advocated for it, we knew it. We fought tooth and nail for my daughter and my son. Both of them were failed. Both of them were failed by public school to the point where we had to pull them out. We found a school that works with kids with dyslexia and neurodivergent thinking, and they put them in smaller classrooms. They work with them one on one. They teach through the science of reading. They math. They do things differently, and they also do stuff with hands on. Right? I mean, a lot of
Mhm.
things with dyslexia because we want to try things. I mentioned it earlier in science. I want to touch. I want to feel. I want to show you that I know how to use this type of stuff. You ask me to put something down on a scantron and take a test, I'll probably fail, right? But if
Yeah.
I know I can demonstrate to you I know this material, and that's the way this teacher took me under his wing and said, "Show me. How do we calculate the barometer? How do we calculate, you know, how the blood moves through the heart?" There was all these things where he I could show him on a picture or show him how the calculations work through the actual device versus saying, is it A, B, or C? And all three numbers looked exactly alike to me because I, I just don't comprehend that way. I don't interpret the words on a piece of paper. So being able to put my kids into a school where they can do hands-on learning is been a godsend. I mean, it really
Mm.
has because I've seen their confidence levels go up. I've seen their skills go up, and you know what? They're going to succeed
Mhm.
versus just crashing and burning.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. One of my favorite posts that you did not that long ago was how you fixed a lawnmower
Yep.
with with like a garden stake. So and it got me thinking, I feel like you're gonna have like the best story for this. So is there a certain time where you've just like MacGyvered your way out of a a tough situation, or the lawnmower one's a good one, but any others that your dyslexic brain will just get you out of some crazy situations that you probably got yourself into in the first place?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'm always doing that. But somebody posted the other day, we're real solution based, right? A friend of mine mentioned, she goes, I always come to you to get the solution to something, right? Um, I always say I have that guy. I have that person that can help me get through stuff. In TV, having a lot of contacts and knowing somebody go, okay, I need somebody that's an expert in, you know, I don't know, heart attacks. Hey, hold on, give me a second. I can go to that type of person. I'm always finding stuff when we are on um, so we're covering the 2017, no, sorry, it was Philadelphia. Yeah, Philadelphia. We were covering the World Series with the Astros against the Phillies. We're up in Philadelphia. Mattress Mac. I don't know if you know that name. He's a local Houston icon when it comes to selling furniture. He's also a big gambler in this sense where he goes, "Come buy this $3,000 couch, and if the Astros win the World Series, you get it free, free, free." Right? So he was there, and he's been really a nice guy. Like, I mean, he's authentically a nice guy. But Philly and Philly fans are not the nicest of people in the world. They recognize him. He was getting a bunch of publicity. They were jumping his case, and he basically just jumped back at him, and it was caught on video and everything else, right? Well, my boss at the time goes, "We don't want to cover this. We don't want to give him free publicity, blah, blah, blah. It's Mattress Mac being, getting camera time." Okay, I get that. Okay, fine. I just want to make sure we're very clear. We're moving forward on other stories. We're going to do it. I had 6 crews in Philadelphia that I was managing. He basically, at the end of the day, our GM goes, "Why are we not covering Mattress Mac? He's the biggest story of the day in Houston at the Astros." This is at the ninth hour. They call one of my reporters, not me. They call one of my reporters and go, "Hey, we need you at 3 and 4 o'clock covering Mattress Mac." At that point, he's already well into his story. He's writing his story. It's a great story at that. I said, he was very upset. He was not happy with the situation. And I said, "Okay, hold up, take a deep breath. Let me figure this out." I called the station back. I said, "Good news. You sent me to Philadelphia to solve your problems." I was able to grab my phone, a mic set, and I called Mac because I have him in my cell phone. I said, "Mac, where are you? Are you in the stadium yet?" Went over there, got a quick interview with him, was able to send that back to the station, said, "Now you have it. Our reporter's not going to front this, but you guys are going to write this story up and y'all can front it within the coverage of our day." Finding solutions versus just saying no is not an option for me. So yes, with the mower thing, that was a true like moment where I was, like, okay, I know what it takes to go find this part. I'm not even going to try. Let me figure this out. In fact, I'm still using it to this day because I still haven't found the part. So it's
Do you
one
want to? We should probably share with listeners like what
sure.
the post itself. I should have done that at the beginning.
So no worries. It's actually kind of funny. So my mower, I'm going out there to mow the lawn, right? If you live in Texas or know Texas, it's 100 degrees outside. Yeah, an hour to mow the lawn is a long day out in the sun. So I get out there, I go to start the mower and snap. The wire that allows the motor to start or turn off, the wire snapped. And I'm like, oh, and this is right at the beginning. I can't do anything else until I get this thing fixed. So what I was able to do is I said in the post, I had 3 options. I could spend my entire day on the internet trying to find a part for a 20-year-old mower. B, I could just give up, throw in the towel, and just, call it a day and not worry about the lawn, which that's not acceptable because my lawn was growing out of control. And then 3, I could figure out a way to fix this thing. So I looked at it and my mind's sitting there going, okay, I need to connect this to this. How do I get this to this? And I was able to tie a loop in the actual wire to where it was sturdy. But you had to have something strong to do. You couldn't just tie a rope. It wouldn't connect. It would break. So I found a garden stake that had a little outshoot to it that would fit into the hole of the lever. And I was like, if that'll fit in there and I bend this way and hook it around it, voila, I have the solution. So I was able to connect it and it, going about my business. Like I said, I'm still using it today because I still haven't found the part.
That is awesome. And one of the dyslexic strengths, I don't think I got this as much as my father and my son, both very mechanical in the way that they see things and can fix things and truly love they love to see how the engine works and gears turn and that makes a belt turn. Are you kind of the same way?
Exact same way. I fix
Yeah.
everything in my house. I don't take my mowers or anything to a mechanic. I'll Google some stuff. I'll
Mhm.
YouTube it. I'll figure out some way of fixing things.
Yeah. And I love one of like my best life hacks ever is to go find like an old boat motor on Facebook Marketplace and for 25 bucks, like it doesn't run and let my kids tear it apart. It is
Yep.
literally the best thing that they can do for their brain. And sometimes they get it working, sometimes they don't, right? But that's like buying a child an art or paint set, right? Like for
Right.
some kids, a
Mhm.
broken boat motor or some plywood and some nails and a hammer is literally the best thing that we can do for these brains is to get
For
them
sure.
outside and just get them creating.
Yep. I don't know if you remember, they used to sell these cars when we were kids that had a little motor in them, a little servo, right? That
Okay.
basically you put it onto a track and it would just go round and round and
Mm.
round and whatever. It had a little motor in it. That little motor was hooked with two wires. My brother liked the car to go around the track. I opened up and took the car apart because I wanted to see how that would work if I hook it up to a battery and I wanted to carve a piece of wood with the little plastic end on it. That's the type of stuff that the dyslexic brain's thinking. I always kind of describe it as I most people walk up to a forest and see a big thing of trees. I walk up to a forest and go, what can I do with these trees? What can I do with this land? What can we make from this type of thing? It's that entrepreneurial thinking.
Mhm.
Some people are able to take it and grab and go. Some people are like, they. This is where you need. We talk about in the workplace and getting to. If you
Mhm.
allow a dyslexic person to just go and find a solution, they're going to make things happen, and they're probably going to do something that is you know, revolutionize things. I mean, we kind of joke around, but you know, somebody wrote me the other day and said, you know, I support everybody with dyslexia. They're doing all these great things. Their minds are amazing and everything else. And I was like, thank you so much for posting this. This is really refreshing to hear. And I go, think about it. Steve Jobs, right? Came up with had an idea in his brain about an iPhone that was doing this. Guess what? I wouldn't be typing back to you on my iPhone if it wasn't for Steve Jobs' way of thinking. And I guarantee you, there was a ton of people sitting around him going, "You're out of your mind." Right? I mean, that's the type of stuff. If you just let it go for a minute, pause, let them do it, you may see something big happen. You may be the next Steve Jobs.
Yeah, yeah, and the worst thing that we can do is say, "Oh, well, that won't work because of," right? Instead of saying like, "Huh, I wonder what would happen if," and you can tee it up, the like, "Hey,
Sure.
have you thought of XYZ?" But the
Right.
worst thing we can do is say like, "Well, you didn't think about this," or "I bet it won't work." But in the same respect, when I say that out loud, and I know you and I are wired a little bit the same way,
Right.
telling either of us that we can't do something is literally pouring gasoline on our fire.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah, it literally, I told you a while back. It's like I live by the mantra of "Hold my beer, watch this." Tell me I can't do something, and I'm going to prove you wrong, because
Mm,
everything is doable. Everything is attainable. You just have to believe that you can do it, and the naysayers, you just push them aside because you know, uh, you know. I kind of describe it as I I do triathlon. I've done
mhm,
Ironman. I've done all that type of stuff, but it's one of those things where one of the things I do in particular is I guide visually impaired and blind athletes. And you know why I do that is because I want to see them succeed, right? I
mhm,
want them, they've always been like me, like you. you've always been told you can't do something. You're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to go to college. You're not going to be able to do this. They've always said, there's no way a blind guy can complete an Ironman triathlon. Hold up. Let me show you this. My first time at an Ironman, first time, I guided a 67-year-old blind athlete. He had already done, this was his number 7. For me, this was my first. I always told him he guided me through my first Ironman. But when I get to the finish line, the key is for me is I always look at their face. I want to see the look of hold my beer, watch this. You've just been told all your life you can't do this. And you just crossed the finish line. What did you need? You needed a solution. What was that solution? You needed somebody's eyes to be able to do it. I didn't carry you through that triathlon. I didn't swim that triathlon for you. I didn't bike that triathlon for you. And I didn't run that triathlon for you. I was there by your side to make sure you didn't fall in a hole. I was there to make sure you didn't go off course on the swim. And I was make sure you didn't fall in the grass on the bike. The bottom line is if you give people an option and an opportunity, they're going to succeed. When you tell somebody they can't over and over again, they're going to crawl into a corner and they're not going to succeed. But what they are going to do, they are going to survive. And dyslexics are, like I said, their brains are very creative. If I'm going to survive, what's the best way? Well, these people are accepting me. Guess what? That's the wrong type of people you want to be with, but they're going to accept you because you maybe think a little different. You could help them in some way, but that sometimes leads you down the wrong path.
Yeah, yeah. That is so fascinating. So how many Ironman or triathlon how many have you done, I
I've
guess?
done 8 full Ironman triathlons, and I mean, I can't count how many marathons and triathlons I've done, just like little triathlons and stuff like that. Yeah, but
Little triathlons.
I've done a few, probably too many for my knees to accept.
Do you think that there's something for you in that as well, as far as, like, proving people wrong? Or is it more maybe like a body thing where you've gotta keep your body moving? 'Cause I don't know, I feel like there's a piece of there somewhere.
There absolutely it is. I
Mhm.
kind of mentioned at the beginning, I was, cleaning up and vacuuming and stuff like that. I always like to move. And movement has always been a big help for me. I always say I do my best writing when I'm running. So I'll
Mhm.
go like I used to when I would do these half-hour specials. I would go in the middle of the day around lunchtime, and I say I'm going to go step out. I'll go run 6 miles, and I'll write the next segment to my thing in my mind. Come back, and I'll put it down on paper. That's the kind of the way why I've done things. You mentioned the proving people wrong. There's absolutely an element of that there. I'm a typical type A personality, and that hold my beer, watch this mentality is directed at something. Like those teachers that told me I couldn't, that boss told me you can't spell, whatever that is always kind of my way of getting back at somebody that told me I can't. And
Mhm.
there is, like I always say, can't is not in my vocabulary. Can is in my vocabulary. I can do stuff, but I can't. You can't tell me I can't do something because I'm going to figure out a way to get it done.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And also I think it's I keep going back to the kids aspect, with you, but I think it's important as parents that we know that too, because that can be dangerous, right? Like, as when my parents told me I couldn't do something, um, that was game on for me, and it wasn't always good either, right? Like, a lot of times it's good, in our careers, we can channel that in good ways and more mature and have more
Right?
executive functioning and all that. Um, but as a 16-year-old, if you tell me I can't do something, I will MacGyver my way into figuring out a way to do it, um, and probably miss the important part of why they asked me not to do it in the first place.
Right. You're absolutely right on that. I probably shouldn't have done a lot of things I did in high school because of that very reason. Um, but at the same time, I also notice kids these days, at least with mine, they're able to channel it pretty well. They're able,
Mm.
like I notice my son, he'll get angry, he'll get frustrated, he'll throw stuff, he'll like he gets that, like he's strong, right? My daughter, she'll kind of hover into a corner. She's not. She's the one that if you she'll straddle that line of I want to do something. She knows she wants to do it. getting her on the other side of that line is always the struggle. But once she gets over there, she's all in. And it's almost like, it's like, okay, take a step back. Now you just need to relax a little bit. You know it, but getting her to that point to say, you need to go out and do X. That's always a struggle. And I think that's a lot of time with dyslexic is you're just nervous to get there. But once you get there, I'm all in type thing. But you figure it out. Hopefully you don't get in trouble doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Luckily, I grew up in a time where cameras weren't on every street corner. I mean, kids nowadays
Absolutely.
a lot more vigilant, you know.
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right with that. And I think overall it's a good thing. It's just something to be aware of, especially with ADHD and just that risk-taking behavior
Yep.
that is so prevalent. I mean, I love to drive fast. If I'm in a really bad mood,
Right.
um, man, there's that adrenaline dopamine hit, even at 42 years old, is
Yeah.
still very prevalent now and
Yeah.
has always been that risk-taking behavior in my world. Um, yeah, so it's just it can be a great thing too, right? Like I walked away from a corporate career that was my dream job and started a new company, which is
Right.
also a risk-taking behavior,
Right.
right? So it can work out in positive ways too. Um, yeah, we just have to make sure that we channel it in the right way and have the right supports and guardrails.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, risk is a good thing. I mean,
Mhm.
risk is it's risk mitigation, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
You figure out where that line is you don't want to cross. It- but guess what? You need to sometimes you got to cross a little bit of a line to get things to make change. It's
Yeah.
like, it goes back to everybody telling you can't do something. That risk, if you don't cross that line sometimes, you don't have an iPhone. If you don't cross that line, you don't drive a Ford. If you don't cross that line, you're not going to land a spacecraft on a dime like that was done yesterday. That's the type of risk taking that you've got to do. But it's a risk mitigation that you got to figure out, am I going to blow up the world if I land this thing here? Or am I going to succeed and create the next, guess what? The reusable vehicle that we need to go to do successful space travel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every great invention, somebody thought it was crazy, right? And couldn't be done.
Yep.
And now we just think of it as, well, of course. But they weren't that way beforehand.
Yep.
So no, that's awesome. So Justin, as we kind of wrap up, I'm just kind of going back to, are there things in your career that a leader did that did really help and support you? I know you talked about the one where the leader kind of helped you with the writing and got you tag teamed with the right person to kind of help you in that way. Any other things that we can kind of pass on to listeners that if they think that they may have their next Justin on their team, any tips for them?
Find that leader, or if you are a leader, look for those opportunities to let a somebody that's dyslexic or ADHD that to spread their wings a little bit. I do have a boss up at work that I have a lot of respect for. He saw something in me with project management and was able to go, you know what? I want to see what you do with this. And he handed me this project and he was like, oh my God, I can't believe you just did that. And it led to more and more projects. And I really love taking on projects all the way from conception to completion because, again, I see the bigger picture. At the end of the day, I can see what the end result is, and I'm able to systematically get there. It goes back to the communication skills. I also know how to communicate really well to make sure all my stakeholders are there. If you allow these kids, these young adults, these people within your organizations to spread their wings and do these things, you're going to get things done. And guess what? You're going to get it done under budget. You're going to get it done within scope, and you're going to get it done and have everybody on the same page and happy. So give them that opportunity to grow. Don't sit there and focus on, well, he didn't spell that word right in the report, or you know what, this could have been written a lot better. Guess what? Get him Grammarly. Get his, give them let him go to Chat GPT and put in a sentence and rewrite that sentence for them. If that's where your focus is, that all can be changed. Just let them know, because technology can correct every word I spell. It can't correct the way I think, and it can't think for me. That's the one thing technology cannot do.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, back to those hold my beer moments, you we
Mhm.
can have those in the workplace too, right? Like,
Oh,
give that dyslexic thinker the toughest challenge that you can't figure out, and literally they will say, "Hold my beer while I figure this out," because they
absolutely.
will. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, and they'll
And
have fun doing it.
you'll see excitement in them. It's not that if you put a dyslexic thinker, somebody that's sitting there at their desk, and you're asking them to do, that same old routine, making the donuts every single day, they're not going to focus. They're not going to be happy, and they're either a going to leave, or b they're going to, just, you know, be that, you know, guy that's sitting there in the corner, sitting there going,
Mhm.
no, they don't care about this. They just want me to make the donuts every day. Stop making the donuts. Let's create donuts with sprinkles and strawberry icing and everything else in between.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm like, why don't we have, like, square donuts or, like, star shaped? Like,
Huh?
how come donuts are always circular and have a hole in
Right?
them? Is that necessary, or is that just a thing that we created?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no. Now we can go recreate donuts. I like that. No, I love it, Justin. Thank you so much for sharing all of your experiences, your Ironman. Do you have anything big coming up soon that you're training for?
No, nothing on the horizon. I'm turning 50 this year, so I'm sure I'll find some challenge out there that'll take me above and beyond.
I'm positive that that will happen as well. I can only imagine,
Yep.
and, that's awesome. Well, we'll put your LinkedIn, in the show notes so people can follow along with you and your journey. I know you do so much to advocate for dyslexic and ADHD individuals and just neurodivergency in general in the workplace, which I appreciate, and I appreciate you using your voice to amplify that as well. So thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it.
Nancy, thank you for having me on. Look, for voices like yours that are out there that are putting it on podcasts and getting these things out there, it makes a difference. And it's going to take that one person hearing it at the college level, at the elementary level, at the junior high level, at the high school level, and in the workplace that's going to hear this, and it's going to change. And that's, again, it's that one person. You need that one person in all these levels to make real change. And hopefully, knock on wood, we've been dealing this since we've known about dyslexia since the 20s, and we're still doing the exact same thing we did from the 20s. So it's time to change that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you again so much. Until next time, friends. Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, I would love it if you would consider subscribing. It is literally the best way you can support our work here. And if you're feeling extra generous, take a screenshot and tag us on social with one of your takeaways from the episode. Until next time, friends, embrace that unique brain you've been given.